A man lost his job, his home, his vehicle, and all of his assets. He and his family lived in a homeless shelter for several months until their allowed time there ended. Since he hadn't secured a job in all that time, they lived on the street. The man was afraid for his family's safety. He had been applying for jobs daily, but no one hired him. One day, as he and his family sat on the street corner watching the corporate office crowd pass by, he started praying, asking for a miracle. Some of the people began to laugh and ridicule him. They said that God had forsaken him. One called him a fool and said that God was a myth. The woman put her arms around her husband. Despite the ridicule, he kept his head up with faith, believing that a light someday would shine at the end of the tunnel, not only for him and his family, but for all others in his situation. He prayed for them as much as he prayed for his own problems. In the meantime, he needed to feed his family. So before begging for a job, he begged for food and money. Unfortunately, his fellow man passed him by and ignored him. The man thought to himself, if only money would fall out of the sky, I would put my family in a hotel room while I beg. Each day, the man looked to heaven and prayed. Each day, the passers-by laughed at him. The oppression his family experienced was heavy. They were mocked on every side. The man actually felt like giving up. Instead, he tried to ignore them. He remembered that trouble wouldn't last always. Although the mockers' laughter made him feel ashamed, he was committed to seeing the glass half full. The man cuddled his child. From the corner of his eye, he saw his wife hold out a trembling hand, saying, "I'm here. We fell into this trouble together, and we will come out of it together." The mockery increased until the woman felt terribly ashamed. The man comforted her as best he could. They gave no energy to retaliation, but prayed for their mockers. Not being able to protect her from the ridicule broke his heart. Besides, doing so would only open the door to more trouble. The corporate group that passed the family daily on their way to lunch threatened to call child welfare to take away his children. The wife needed this nightmare to end now. The family had been sitting on that corner for 3 days, waiting for a promised message from the director of the shelter where they had lived, which was located on the corner across the street. She could plainly see them sitting there from her office window and had promised to let them know when beds were available at a sister shelter 5 miles away. However, the message never came, only the continued jeers and threats from onlookers. Why didn't anyone care, they asked themselves. Why didn't someone offer a cup of water or a warm blanket to their little ones? They had always helped others, but now, where was their help? Even though he knew that God was with him, the man couldn't bear to see his family in such pain. He knew that they couldn't go on like this. He didn't understand why no one would give him a chance, why no one had hired him. They needed a change soon. The child saw the despair on his parents' faces and said, "We should pray." So they did. "Help us, Father. You are faithful. Give us help from trouble, for vain is the help of man. Give us help, Father. Help us, Father." After the prayer, a remarkable thing happened. An elderly woman approached and handed the man an envelope. She invited him and his family to the restaurant across the street. The man and his family sat down to a hearty meal. They were allowed to order one meal after another and ate until they were stuffed. The kind woman was very pleased. She gave the man a business card and asked him and his family to meet her in the morning for breakfast. Afterwards, she would take him to the address on the business card. They all agreed. After she left, the man's wife opened the envelope. In it, she found enough money to rent a hotel room for 2 months. They were amazed. They immediately prayed and thanked God for his kindness and mercy. The next morning, after breakfast, the woman took the homeless man to meet her son-in-law. He owned the company on the business card she had given him. The son-in-law had intended to give him a job in the grounds and landscaping department, but when the man's impressive application had been reviewed, he was granted an interview right away. The man's work history showed that he had quite a way with numbers. As it turned out, the company was in drastic need of a chief financial officer. The son-in-law was pleased to offer him the job on the spot. The old woman happily congratulated him. In less than an hour, he had been transitioned from a homeless man on the street to a high-paid corporate professional. His 5-figure sign-on bonus would be enough to purchase a car and put a deposit down on a nice apartment. As he shook the owner's hand again, 3 of his new subordinates stood knocking. They needed to talk about an office issue. The owner opened the door and allowed them to enter. To the new CFO's shop, they were 3 of the men that stood mocking and laughing at him the day before. The owner introduced him to them as their new manager. "I expect you 3 to bring him up to speed. You'll report to him first thing in the morning," he said. With their hearts caught in their chests, they looked at the CFO and said, "We'll do that tomorrow, sir." They then hurried out of the office in shame. The rest of the clique that made fun of their new manager was going to get a big surprise. Though life had become difficult, the man kept his faith when life threw him unexpected challenges. He was able to overcome adversities and experience personal growth. He refused to be distracted by mockers and circumstances. The moral of this story is, when life knocks you down, it's how you get up that matters. This man got up by staying humble before God. He paid his blessing forward by opening a homeless shelter on the street corner where he and his family once lived.